Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented as always by Remington Tavern. You can find Remington Tavern at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy. That's REMITAV, Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. While you're there, you can grab yourself a ice cold Cincy Light. Thank them for sponsoring our studios here. But George, with that, there's been a lot going on in the last week.
A wild week. Yeah, been a lot of fun. Too bad there wasn't a ball game tonight down at Great American, but they'll play 2 tomorrow.
We will certainly get to the Reds here in this show. But first, we've got to start. Normally, we don't start with the Bengals unless they're in season, but this week we will start with the Cincinnati Bengals. Probably the biggest news this week, as they had the NFL draft Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And initially, I did not love this draft. I truthfully hated it. And the more that the dust settles a little bit, I look at this draft and I see 6 dudes that can contribute this season.
So you are rationalizing these picks to where now you can get behind it. I like it.
I mean, it's the story of being a Bengals fan, right?
I know. I would give them. Well, I got a cold shot of tequila here. I'm sober. I got to do something about this. But tell me I'm wrong. I mean, I kind of give this draft a C plus B minus grade.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Because I do think that 17th overall pick, I'm not sold on. I am not sold on. Not saying he doesn't work. It doesn't work out. But I have the same complaint everybody else did when they made that pick of Shamar Stewart. And it's like they've got 2 or 3 guys already like that we're still waiting on to show that, to realize that potential that they have. And right. I need some production out of a guy that I'm taking 17th overall. I need a track record that I can rely on. Now, I guarantee you Al Golden and other people in that room and the defensive line coach went through every play this year, every snap that Shamar Stewart had. Probably went through it a few times to make sure they were seeing what they saw and what they were getting. But man, I'm holding my breath on that one, just like I've been holding my breath on several throughout the years. And more often than not, when I feel like this, that initial thought was correct. So we'll see if Stewart pans out. He needs to, for this draft, to get anywhere above a C plus or a B minus. I do love the fact, though, when you look at all the guys together, including Stewart, and you look at their character and their work ethic and their background, and they all seem to have this team first attitude, yet enough individual fiber that they are captain material and people like that. I love that the draft. I just think, the Bengals have done that quite a lot recently, and it seems like that works for them. And I'm all for it. I'm all for it. You want to draft guys that you're paying these guys good money. You don't want to have to worry about them just doing the bare minimum. Now, they may have had a whiff last year in the 3rd round. We're still waiting to see because that's problematic. But that's also not a position they seem to be hurting at, wide receiver. So they took a little bit of a gamble there, especially, at the time, if that works out, maybe they don't have to pay both of those big contracts. They're going to pay Chase. But, if Burton would have shown, hey, I'm here to take a starting spot, maybe they wouldn't have had to pay all that money. But I'm glad that they have those 2 wide receivers and can mix in they still have, Yossi Voss and other guys on the roster that will be fine as the 3rd wide receiver. But getting back to this year's draft, I do love the character of these guys they drafted. I guess they are happy with their young defensive tackles. I kind of wish, and you can't get everything, right? They got the 2 linebackers. I felt like either in the, one of those 2 could have been, your third offensive tackle or a swing guy or something. But you take each guy individually, and I like both those linebackers. I really do. I love the guard they got out of Georgia, Dylan Fairchild. I mean, I think that dude's going to be – I think he's going to be really good for them. So, again, it's the top of the draft, the first round, where I have my biggest complaint and concerns. But we'll see if if Al Golden does what the Bengals are anticipating and puts this guy in situations, and they have new coaches all around that hopefully can coach this kid up.
Cincinnati legend in his own right, Luke Kuechly, had nothing but good things to say about Shamar Stewart coming to Cincinnati. He was very high on him, very high. Said he had maybe the highest ceiling of anybody in this draft.
You showed me that graphic last week, or did you send that to me in a text?
Yeah, I sent that to you in a text.
Yeah, it was in a text. And that's interesting stuff. That
highest RAS score ever.
Yeah, can you explain that?
I mean, essentially,
self-explanatory. It made sense.
Yeah, the RAS score is where they take all of the measurables for everything they do in the combine, everything that they are physically, and they grade them. And he had the highest grade ever by a defensive end in the history of doing this. They haven't done this terribly long, but long enough to get
years, though, right?
Long enough to get 2,029 total defensive ends, and he was the highest graded amongst them over the course of the last however many years. So there's something to be said for that. And it's not as if he isn't getting to he's not finishing, but he's getting to the quarterback. So somebody's getting those sacks. So maybe that's one of those things where even if he doesn't get to the quarterback, if he can create havoc, and whether it's causing interceptions, causing bad throws, causing somebody else to get the sack, whatever the case may be. And the more that I read up on some of the guys analyzing this stuff, essentially they said that the defensive players that we drafted were guys to try and stop Lamar. And if that's what your goal is, it's not a terrible goal to have.
No.
When you talk about the linebackers, you have kind of made it to where you did have you had a hole at linebacker, really. And if you're trying to move Jermaine Pratt, you now have given yourself the flexibility to do so. So that's a situation where we'll see what happens with that. I don't know that they've drafted a guy to be able to move Trey Hendrickson. I don't know that.
I don't think they have either.
I don't know that I'm there, but we'll see what happens in regards to Trey and his contract. What I think they did, though,
content to keep him this year and see what happens. And I don't think you have to worry about Trey Hendrickson not playing and not earning his keep on this year's contract. I mean, I could be wrong. He may not show up at training camp. He may just chuck it and say, I'm not playing for this year's money, but I don't think he will. I think he's going to see this team has an opportunity to do well. And I think they're content to let that play out, and you get his production this year, and then you deal with it after that. And then Shamar Stewart's got a year under his belt. And so does Miles Murphy, so does Joseph Asai, so does Cam Sample, and maybe somebody out of that kettle steps up and is that guy that can be the lead dog the following season. So I'm not panicked at all by it. I just think they could have. I'm just worried about the lack of production in college by Stewart, but as you said, Luke Kuechly and people who are a hell of a lot smarter and a hell of a lot more tuned in than me are high on this guy. And I wish somewhere I could get like every stinking snap of these guys, because I would spend the time going over it and looking at it.
You're in retirement. You have that time now.
Exactly. Before. And I'm thinking about that this week, and I'm like, good God, maybe I should just start looking at these guys and helping somebody on their draft analysis or something. Not that I know what the hell I'm doing, but I would be more than happy to do it. It would be fun.
Don't you have any strings at PFF that you can pull?
Maybe the people, Chris is still around, but two of my main contacts are gone now. One's with like CBS and God, I don't know where the other one is. He's probably back in England. But it's I may be able to, who knows? But I would love to have a cut up of some of these kids the Bengals are considering or who you are projecting and go through, so I would have a little better idea of what's going on. Because quite honestly, unless you do that, or you're their position coach or their teammate or their head coach, and you're around them a lot and all that, it's hard to tell. I mean, we're going by stuff that, well, let's put it this way, we're going by a lot of opinions that these draft analysts have, and those are the same guys that were saying, Dion's kid was going to be a top 10 pick, and he goes in the 5th round. So, I mean, I kind of like to have my own eyes on it before I really trust a strong opinion on a draft pick.
Well, getting back to those linebackers, Demetrius Knight Jr. from South Carolina, very productive in his time down there. Same for Barrett Carter from Clemson. I'm excited to see what they can bring because, like I said, I think we had some holes at linebacker. You and I had talked about if they went linebacker first round, neither of us would be upset about that. They didn't end up going with the guy that I wanted from Alabama.
And I hope they don't regret that because, good God, he fell, I guess, because of a shoulder issue. Yeah. But if that's not an issue, I think there's going to be a lot of teams sorry they passed on that kid.
But then they take you alluded already, Dylan Fairchild, the guard from Georgia. Not the guard that I wanted. I wanted Tate Ratledge. Didn't end up taking him in the 2nd round. They passed on him, and they ended up taking his teammate, who actually was teammates also with Matt Lee. I'm getting that's Jalen Rivers. That's the other one.
Correct.
But Jalen Rivers, he's able to play all 5 positions. At least he has. In college, he played all 5 positions on the offensive line, the tackle out of Miami. So I'm interested to see. Again, I don't know that necessarily he's going to start, but I think that there's quite a possibility of him getting playing time. If he's able to play all 5 positions, he becomes the ultimate swing man, not just your swing tackle, but your swing guard, your swing center. He can play anywhere on the entire offensive line.
Yeah, that is so valuable. And there's a guy who was kind of that way during, early in his career that Bengals fans know, named Dave Lapham, and they called him the Tool because he could play anywhere. And that's kind of, it'd be nice if this guy can have that kind of career that Dave had. But they needed a guy like that, and you got a guy like Cody Ford too. How valuable has that guy been since they took him? Absolutely, very valuable to this team. And so I'm on board, and it sounds like I'm, raving about this draft, and I do like what they did after round 1. I'm just questioning that, but the kid from Georgia, the guard, when you talk about his wrestling career and just what this guy just eats, sleeps, and drinks competition and is ready. And it was funny when they talked to him about meeting the offensive line coach, who's the Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, and whether he kind of took him down when he worked him out a little bit. He's like, I wanted to. And I love that attitude. I love that attitude that this kid brings. And they say he's ahead of the game in pass protection. Wants to work on that run blocking, but he's got the tools to do it. And my God, if he was a wrestling 67-0 in his high school wrestling career.
That's absurd.
As a heavyweight, I mean, come on. This kid's I think he's gonna be a mauler for him before it's all said and done. If he doesn't pan out, I'm gonna be very disappointed in my my ability to project some of these guys, because I think they hit it out of the park on that pick.
That said, I'd still love for them to take a waiver on Dalton Risner and see what you got in regards to just making it a full-on competition at both guard spots.
There's nothing wrong with that, because we're assuming the new guy's going to take the right guard position, but let's go. You can never have enough of those guys, and it kind of line injuries kind of derailed this team a couple years ago when they started. Really
when you go to the Super Bowl and you're playing with dudes essentially almost off the streets. I don't know that any of those guys are still in the league.
Right, and what screwed them over in the end of that game? It was the big guy for the Rams blowing that play. I mean, it's
Aaron
just
Donald, yeah.
I mean, and that guy could beat any. I mean, you could have had an All-Pro against him, and that could still happen with his talent.
Correct.
But yeah, that's the thing is, so you can never have enough of those good big guys.
Then you round out the draft with Taj Brooks from Texas Tech, a guy that if you are a Bearcats fan, you are all too familiar with, because we've seen him the last 2 years, but he was really, really good at Texas Tech, and I'm really excited that you get him in the 6th round.
When they called his name, I'm like, he's still there, because we saw this kid play, and he was as advertised. I did a lot of research on him before UC played him the first time, and I'm just like, oh my God, he really can't be this impressive, and he was. Really good player, got a lot of wear on him because they handed him the rock a lot, but he seemed to handle it well. And the one kid that went to Seattle out of Michigan State, the running back a few years ago, who ran a bazillion times his senior season for the Spartans, but it hadn't seemed to hurt him any at the NFL level to have all that wear on his tires. And hopefully it doesn't hurt Taj. And they're not going to ask him to be a bell cow this year,
No.
Right. It's not like he's going to have to, carry the ball 20 times a game or anything crazy like that. So I think that was a great pick. Good for the Bengals. He was still there. I was kind of surprised he was, but great pick by Cincinnati.
Right now, that running back room looks like Chase Brown, Samaj Pirine back in the fold, and Zach Moss. So Taj Brooks, I think, has quite the opportunity to carve out a role, because truthfully, I'll be a little surprised if Zach Moss makes the roster going into game 1 at this point. That all said, though, Taj Brooks, he did finish 4th all time on the Big 12 rushing list behind Cedric Benson, Ricky Williams, and Darren Sproles. Those are all good names to finish right behind. So I'll be interested to see how Taj Brooks pans out, and I'm definitely excited that you snag him in the 6th, but I think he'll see some – I certainly wouldn't expect him to be in the what was the kid from Michigan? Chris Evans. I don't think you're going to see him in that type of a role where he just is on the team and never touches the ball. I think he'll see some touches this season.
Yeah, well – and you don't want to overload any of your running backs and expose them more than you have to. So I love the pick, and I really thought somewhere along the line the Bengals would probably try to make a deal and snag an extra pick, and I guess the opportunity wasn't there. But I don't mind that they stuck with what they have. I would have loved to have seen them in retrospect, and I hope I'm wrong on this. Trust me, I hope I'm wrong on this. I would have loved to just seen them go ahead and move down in the 1st round and snag an extra pick. But they did what they did. They obviously liked this kid enough that they didn't do that, and so there we are.
The last time you moved in your chair there, George, there you are. You were real fuzzy for a minute. I don't know. In any case.
Oh, look at this ring, by the way. You want to get off subject here. Let's see if you can see that.
Oh, there you go. The Bearcats wedding band. How about that?
Yeah. That kudos to the wife for that.
The Bengals weren't the only ones drafting, of course, and one Cincinnati Bearcat this season did hear his name called. It was John Williams in the 7th round as he goes to the Green Bay Packers. He does extend the streak, I believe, to 10 seasons. Now the Bearcat has been drafted. So your thoughts on John Williams, who we were talking about last night. Would you have ever guessed a year ago that John Williams would have been the one?
No, I would not have put my chips on him. Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
He developed, he played his butt off and turned himself into a draftable prospect. So certainly best of luck to him. I love to see all those Bearcats do well at the next level and play in the NFL. And it's, obviously it's good for the program and the fans love it. And it's really cool to see those guys do well at that level. I was shocked that Kandra didn't get drafted. I mean, that's a guy I was kind of hoping the Bengals might jump on at some point, but even after the draft, I would have loved to have seen him get a shot here, but he may be in a better situation. We're at Carolina, right?
Yep.
He may be in a better situation down there. But we'll see. But I was surprised. I thought he would get drafted. I thought he played well enough, and it's just, obviously a quality kid, loves to play the game, and is one of those dudes that just, comes to work every day. And I love those kind of guys. Especially, it's funny because when I was that age, I don't know that I could have done it like those guys do it in the way, oh my God, I wish I could have. And then the older I got, I'm like, oh my God, you see all the errors you made in that regard and didn't put in as much work as you should have or done things as it. It took me till I was about 22 or 3 before I finally realized you kind of got to work for it all the time. And it's not like I was raised with a silver spoon. I wasn't. I was just lazy. I was just a lazy kid.
Well, you mentioned Luke Kandra. He does go to the Carolina Panthers as an undrafted free agent, along with Corey Kiner to the San Francisco 49ers, Jared Bartlett to the New York Jets, Jamoy Mays to the Bengals. Shocker. Josh Minkins to the Patriots, D'Artagnan Tinsley to the Cleveland Browns, and then Eric Phillips got a camp invite as well to the San Francisco 49ers.
And that's a good list, and that's a cool list. And look at all the free agents, though, the undrafted free agents that make it. Now, remember, this draft used to be, God, I forget when I was a kid how many rounds, but it was in the teens. And then they pared it back to like 12 rounds or something. And then finally they got to 7. So there's a lot of good talent outside the drafted players that, may spend a year on the practice squad and then get a little traction and eventually, 2 or 3 years down the road become a starter or a reliable backup in the NFL and have a pretty good career and make good money along the way. So best of luck to all those guys. Just because you didn't get drafted doesn't mean you're not going to have a productive pro football career.
No, we've seen that just recently as Ivan Pace has certainly made a name for himself with the Minnesota Vikings, became kind of a star in his own right there.
I don't know how. No, he's kind of rare, though, that an undrafted free agent just walks in the camp and it's like, hello, here's a starting position. That doesn't happen that way a lot with him, but it can happen, and he's, exhibit 1A.
And he doesn't have the measurables that usually end up being that guy for a linebacker. So
that's why he goes to Miami. And then I remember he's a freshman and gets 5 sacks in one game. I don't give a damn if it's the MAC. I don't care if it's the Cincinnati Hills League. 5 sacks in one game. And so I'm like, holy God, did everybody whiff on this kid? Then he comes to UC and does what he does is 1 year there. And wow, that's where we go back to that chart you talked about with Shamar Stewart and being number 1 on that. But that's where those measurables kind of go out the window. And I know I mean, I've seen so many stats about, only 1% of guys with this kind of height and weight at this position ever make it. So I get why teams do what they do, because, history is history, facts are facts, and you make decisions based on that. But man, one of these days, someone's going to figure it out and find a way to measure a heart and will and that kind of stuff. And then maybe they won't have so many whiffs in the draft. But boy, that kid, I mean, we saw how productive he was, and it sucks that he's right up the road from the Bengals, 2 miles from Paycor Stadium or whatever it is, and they didn't take a flyer on that dude. However, he hit a better situation up there because he had a better path, probably a system to fit what he does.
Sure.
And it worked out. And that's a big part of it too. These teams have different systems, and a lot of them now are getting closer to the same in the NFL. College, it used to be all over the map, and even that's starting to get a little homogenized, but still, you got to find the guy that fits your system. And that's why Pittsburgh's been so damn successful for so long, because they've had a similar, it's evolved, but they've had a similar deal since 1971. And that's why Pittsburgh does what Pittsburgh does at the NFL level.
Well, switching gears a little bit, the Bearcats baseball takes 2 of 3 this past weekend from Oklahoma State. The game on Friday, I believe it was suspended in the middle of the game, and they had to complete it on Saturday. They complete that. They get the win on both the Friday game and the Saturday game, and then they did drop the last game of the series on Sunday. But they're still – I saw a graphic today somewhere on Twitter, but they have them as the last 4 out right now in the College World Series. Getting swept by West Virginia 2 weekends ago did not help their cause at all.
No, that week really hurt.
But they do have, and then follow that up with the Xavier loss as well. But they have no midweek games this week, and they have a series against number 25 Kansas. You put something together against Kansas, maybe you're back in the conversation again.
I certainly hope so. And yeah, they're like flirting around with that bubble.
Yep.
They may end up battling for a spot with Xavier. But let's just, that's where they're at now. But X may win that Big East again too, and that'll take care of that. But at least they're in the mix, and look, they're still in the mix, and that's not something I was anticipating 4 months ago. You were hoping, but they're probably above where I thought they would be at this point in April.
Well, time will tell. Again, big series this weekend as they are at Kansas to take on a top 25 team. But speaking of baseball, the Cincinnati Reds are on a little tear of their own. They are on a 5-game win streak, the first 5-game win streak under Tito. And it seems like things are clicking for your Cincinnati Reds, George.
Well, they're hitting the ball.
They are.
They're still getting good pitching. And they're getting not just good starting pitching, good work out of the bullpen. I mean, Pagan is taking over that closer role, and God, I want to say he had like 4 saves in the past week or so. I mean, it's great to see, and it's what we wanted to see, and it's what we hoped Cincinnati was getting when they hired Terry Francona as manager, and getting some of these guys to believe in themselves. And even when they hit a skid, it's not a doomsday skid. It's not starting whatever they started a couple years ago, 3-21. It wasn't allowed to get to that point. They found ways to win some games and keep losing streaks from multiplying. And I just, and now you've got the guys they added. I mean, Lux and Hayes, and let's
Yeah.
cross our fingers on Hayes'
Right.
MRI on that hamstring. My God, that's the last thing they need right now
Yeah.
because he's been such a catalyst for this offense. I mean, it's like since he came back and pounded the ball, it kind of took the pressure off a lot of people. And I think Matt McClain's going to get going. I really do. Um, he's striking out a little more than he has, previously. That's a little concerning, but it's so early. I mean, I can't say it's a problem, but he's still hitting the ball hard when he hits it. In fact, he's hitting the ball as hard as damn near anyone on the team when he hits it. So I think he'll come out of it. And then you throw, Marte in that mix and Steer coming around. And holy God, and Ellie's still hitting the ball and has been hitting it pretty well. Maybe he's not driving in as many runs, but, he's probably hitting 3+ over the past couple of weeks. So it's great to watch. They're fun to watch play. Hunter Green is must-see TV when he takes the mound. His last start wasn't his best. He gave up 2 home runs, but guess what? He only gave up 3 runs. He minimized the damage, and the Reds win the game, and he gets the win. They're just doing so many things right now. And Nick Lodolo on Sunday. Was it Sunday? Yeah. Now Nick Martinez last night.
Yeah.
That was so, and Abbott didn't have a good start Friday, but you're going to have those. Anyone's going to have those. You're not going to be perfect every time out. And he still battled his butt off and wasn't horrible. It just wasn't his best effort. But and I'm trying to remember, that was probably in Colorado, wasn't it? Boy, that was so big to sweep them because Colorado sucks. They stink.
4-21.
You can't go out there and scuffle around and lose that series. And the Cubs have gotten off to a hot start. So, you've got to take care of business when you can. And, you got the Cardinals coming in who have been struggling, and they took care of it last night. That's why, I'm very hopeful for tomorrow, 2 games tomorrow. I just really, really, really like the way they're playing right now. And their defense is better. They're actually playing acceptable defense.
Well, you just went on a diatribe about the Reds and didn't even mention maybe their best hitter right now outside. It's hard. It's crazy that we have 3 guys you could probably put in their best hitter right now between Gavin Lux, Austin Hayes, and Noelvi Marte. Noelvi Marte's beating the snot out of the ball right now.
Oh, wait a minute. I mentioned him.
Did you?
Oh, yeah, early on. But I didn't spotlight because – go ahead. Because we need to talk about him specifically. I agree.
He made mention this week. He said that essentially he went down to AAA. It was necessary for him to get his head right, get everything where it needed to be. He came up, didn't miss the opportunity. He came up and got a spot start and ran with it, really. I guess he'd been working with Mike Napoli, and he saw something in his swing where he was letting go of it high with the one hand, and he had to keep it 2 hands to follow through. And ever since then, he's been lights out.
Yeah. And he also talked about trying to just drive the ball up the middle. And when you do that, that's to me, that is one of the keys in hitting. And I'm not Joey Votto, trust me. I don't know hitting that well. But a key is driving the ball up the middle, because then if you're a little bit late, but you're still driving it, you drive it to the gap in right center, or you drive it to right field. You may drive it down the right field line. If you're a little early, you may drive it to the left center. Drive the ball. And if you concentrate on driving it up the middle and you happen to be a fraction off here or there and pull it a little bit, you're still driving the damn ball somewhere. And if you're – it's so nice to see him, because we saw this talent. And then last year he had the issue with the suspension. And then what did the Reds do? My ass would have sent him down to Daytona in Florida, and he would have started at low A and worked his way back. The Reds, they had him play a game or two at Louisville, and they put him on the major league roster. And now, you're on charter flights and you're in the hotel. You're a big leaguer. You don't have to do anything. I would have made him earn his butt back. And I think that's what the Reds did in spring training. I don't know if it was Terry Francona. I don't know if it was the front office with Meter and Crawl. I don't know. But that was the right thing to do in spring training, was have him among the first roster cuts and send a message that this ain't the same deal anymore. You're going to work and you're going to earn your keep and you're going to figure it out. And that kid's got a ton of talent. And thank God it appears they're not going to waste it.
In 66 games, 229 at-bats, he had 48 hits, 9 doubles, 4 home runs, 18 RBI. Last year, 9 walks. This year, in 13 games, 46 at-bats, he has 17 hits, 4 doubles, triple. He didn't have one last year. 3 home runs, 16 RBI, just 2 less than what he had all of last season. 5 walks, which is half of what he had last season.
And that's something Jeff Brantley talked about the other night, was his pitch selection has gotten better too. But I think a lot of that goes back to driving it up the middle, and you're looking for a ball that you can hit up the middle. And if you're off a little bit this way or that way, at least you're a hell of a lot better off when your mind is thinking that way, in my opinion. And it's crazy to think that, I was never anywhere near that level, but God, I love baseball. I love playing baseball. I loved hitting, even though I didn't do it very well. But when you would get in stretches where you thought I could drive everything right through the pitcher's head, that's when I seemed to go on. Why I didn't keep doing that, I don't know. But I'll tell you why. Because when you get to be a senior in high school and guys are throwing, 90 or 92 or 93 and they're wild, I ain't staying in that box like these guys do. I'm sorry. So the first time I saw a legitimate slider, I pretty much soiled my shorts. I mean, it's just like it was a strike and I'm halfway back to the bench bailing out of the batter's box. And that's when I knew, son, you ain't going to be playing this game, because if you don't hang in against that stuff, and these are high school kids throwing sliders. These aren't major leaguers. I don't know how those guys do it. They're just, I'll admit it. I was afraid of the ball, I think, a little too much. And, you're never going to get anywhere that way. But I just love to see success stories like this. And we knew this kid had it, and it's good to see him doing it.
Well, don't look now, but your Reds are 16-13, 3 games over 500. They're 1 game back on the Central behind the Cubs. They are 7-3 in their last 10, and they are plus 43 run differential behind only in all of baseball the New York Yankees at plus 53 and the New York Mets at plus 50. So
that's great.
It is crazy. Also, by the way, if the season ended,
24-run game that skewed it that we talked about.
Sure, that's fine. But
you look at the Dodgers and they're like plus 17 or something like that.
It's all part of it. It's all part of it. But also,
whatever they are is impressive.
If the season ended today, your Cincinnati Reds would have a wild card spot. So that all said,
they got to find a way to. I
agree.
The Cubs were winning tonight. The last I saw, they were up 4-0. So it'll probably be a game and a half going into tomorrow. But hey, it's we may have a fun season here. I'm pretty fired up about this, if you can't tell.
That all said, there were plenty of fans 2 weeks ago in the 162 game season ready to give up on the Reds, wondering why Terry Francona came out of retirement. I don't understand what we're doing with any and all of that. And to top it all off, you've got people who actually think, and I could be very wrong on this, but you have people who actually think that we should just eat Jaime Candelario's contract and be done with this dude because he has a couple bad weeks. He's been terrible. Nothing short of terrible this season. I will acquiesce to that. But to eat that contract just because there's ways to figure it out. Apparently they are. He has a back issue. Came out today. Terry Francona had a conversation with him, talked about diminishing his role, which good. You can talk to a veteran in the MLB and tell him that we're going to slow your role. And he's now having an MRI as well. Turns out he's got a back issue, and he very well could end up on the IL and go down to the minors and potentially get right.
That's the best thing that could happen, in my opinion. And I think this is the way. And I hope it's nothing serious. I'm sure there is some type of lower back injury if they're going to go through with the MRI. But so the Reds are not in position to eat these kind of contracts. That's the problem. That's the Dodgers could, the Yankees could, the Mets could, the Cubs could.
No one's eating. I don't care if it is the Yankees or the Dodgers. No one's eating a contract a month into the season.
Well, we're a year and a month into this experiment, and and I know when they signed him, we were both sitting here scratching our heads. What the hell are they doing? So at the time, we knew this was probably a mistake to sign this infielder with what the Reds already had on their plate.
At his age.
Yeah, at his age, and that money to him for, at the time, was, where do we put this guy? Then Matt McClain gets injured, and it's like, okay, at least they have this veteran that they signed. But that was that was a bad contract for the Reds to take on in the first place. I don't know why they did it.
I won't argue that.
Yeah. And so now you can't eat the damn thing, or you can't, and I don't want him to, because he could still be help. And even if he's coming off the bench, if he's better than what you have behind him, but they got to get him healthy. He's got to get right. So whatever this MRI shows, and hopefully it's nothing too serious, and he's able to be on the injured list for a little bit, come back, do a medical rehab, and get himself right. And trust me, by then, there's probably going to be another injury here or there where they can use him off the bench, spot starter, whatever, for the rest of this season. And at least there's some use out of him. But we all knew when they signed him, we're scratching our head. Like, I could understand maybe an outfielder with some pop getting that contract, but I didn't understand that. Here we are. So they got to make the best of it. And I think they are. I think this is, I don't want anyone to be hurt, but at the same time, this is the best solution for this problem, for him to get right. Because you can't send him down. I'm sure he's out of options, and you can't throw him down in the minors and stash him there. So he's on the injured list for a week, maybe 2, maybe 3, goes on a rehab assignment, and you milk that for all it's worth. And if there's no room for him, maybe he tweaks that back a little bit and goes on the injured list, because you're already out the money. So you got to make it work. And to me, this is the best solution. And God bless the Reds for doing it.
Well, we'll see what happens there. Tyler Stevenson could be coming back as early as, I believe, Thursday.
What do you make of that? Like, Austin Wynns has been out of his mind. Trevino's been out of his mind. So
I hate the idea of the Reds carrying 3 catchers. That said, right now, the Reds have been playing Spencer Steer almost as an everyday first baseman. If Candelario is going to miss time, you've got an opening essentially at first base. And if you are bringing Stevenson up and you're going to use him predominantly at first base, I don't hate it.
Right.
3 catchers.
I agree. I think it's going to be first base, designated hitter. They're probably not going to put him behind the plate a whole lot in the beginning anyway. So you can carry 3 if he's operating as a first baseman, DH. Steer's going to morph to where he goes to the outfield now because everything's starting to come together. Thank God. I was really worried about that whole shoulder impingement.
Well,
he wasn't hitting, which is kind of what he does.
Is shoulder impingement the new trend right now? It seems everybody on the Reds who's injured has a shoulder impingement.
Spires has it. Steer had it. Somebody else, right? Who's the other? There's another one.
There was another. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yes.
That thing. And my understanding of those things, you don't fix them with surgery. I don't understand that. I should have asked. I saw my orthopedic yesterday. He could have explained that to me. Damn it. I should have asked him. I will text someone and find out what the hell this is all about, because I don't understand an injury like that you can't, surgery doesn't repair it.
It's contagious right now. We'll see. But
I mean, they can replace shoulders, for God's sakes.
I know. So we'll see what happens in regards to that. That does make an interesting situation for the roster. I'm very curious to see what moves are made in that regard.
I should get your boy Kremchek on here some night to explain all this to us.
I don't know that I would be involved in that conversation. That might be one where I sit out and produce while you have that conversation.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because it is fascinating stuff, and how far all that has come since I was a reporter and started dealing with these guys and dealing with these doctors about these injuries and stuff, and what they can do now and what they can diagnose and how they diagnose it. And Lord knows the last 2 years I've had enough of my own deal learning about shit. I can tell you about back injuries if you really want to know.
We're good. Anyway, I don't know. I love seeing the Reds having success. And again, this is why you don't give up on them in April. What are we doing?
Right. And Matt McLean is not hitting his best right now. And
he'll be fine.
I'm telling you, this team is they could be very sneaky good here. I'm excited. And Hunter Green turning into what he's turning into. It's could be a fun year. I really hope so. I hope it's not another one of these disappointing things that we've had over and over and over and over. And it seems like it's gone on forever. And it has. It's gone on for 30 years.
I agree. That all said, switching gears again, the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. They did announce a new hire on the staff today, George.
I heard about this.
They have a new assistant coach. It is Mamadou Ndiaye, or Njai, I guess. Njai is how you pronounce it.
Yes.
He comes here from UCF, of course. The UCF fans are in complete shambles about the way they feel this entire situation went down. Now you have rumors flying this way, that way, and every way about him shopping both his services along with Mustafa Cham mid-season. Although all reports coming in from the Bearcats are that they were not involved until Drew Adams was gone, which was after their season was over as he departed for IU. You would not be trying to hire in an assistant coach, logically, until you had an open spot. And that's kind of where we're at. But
the only thing I would say about that, all right, God, it sounds like I would be indicting the Bearcats, but I'm not. But I think if there's one thing the Bearcats could have used when you start looking is someone that could coach big men, right?
Sure.
I think that was a crying need since Mike Roberts left. And I thought he did a terrific job. I thought he did a terrific job. And I didn't know how well he did until he was gone. And then you see what goes on. And I'm like, oh, my God, we need someone to work with big men. So I can see where maybe somewhere during the season if I'm on the UC staff and I'm sitting there like, God, we could use a guy that could coach these big men. But I don't think that happened. I think that's just a bunch of, whining from down south. Not that stuff doesn't happen. It does. But let me ask you this. Did Njai and Chom show up at UCF together or not?
I believe so.
Was it similar or close or was he? I don't know. It's
Njai got there in 2021.
So he was there early. Okay.
But he was the one that got Chom to come over, enroll a year early, skip his senior year of high school, or else he would never have been at UCF last year to begin with.
Right.
The guy is known for getting players. That's why you hire him.
Right.
If you're UCF, if you're San Francisco, if you're Georgia Tech, if you're USF, all the places that he has worked, that's why you hire him, is to get players.
That has gone on forever, too. That has gone on since the 50s, the 60s, the 70s.
Didn't LSU hire Pete Maravich's dad?
Yes.
Kansas hired Danny Manning's dad?
Yes.
What are we doing? Like, they're talking human trafficking.
And Danny Manning's going to come here, man. He was going to come to Cincinnati because they had
hired his dad.
That's right. Yeah, it's God, that all goes back to Ron Grinker too. Jesus, that's crazy. But yeah, that stuff's gone on forever. But there's nothing nefarious here. What did he say?
He just said basically UCF's a bunch of crybaby and crybaby.
Yeah, and this, yes. This it's college basketball. It's it is the Wild West now. It really is. But that cuts both ways, and who knows? They could be off to Duke in 2 weeks the way things work in this world.
Portal's closed, George. They wouldn't be. In any case,
thank God.
Thank God is right. One last topic to get to because they are still winning, George. But FC Cincinnati beats Kansas City 2-1 on Saturday. They're still scoring more than one in order to do this. And I believe their goalkeeper, he's essentially putting up crazy numbers, right? Like as far as his winning percentage, I believe, right?
Yep, the young man out of Indiana. He's doing a great job. And then you did see the goal by FC Cincinnati. Yay, nay?
No.
Evan Denke? Okay, look it up. The bicycle kick off the corner. Oh, my God. Probably the best goal in FC Cincinnati history. To me, it is. And I don't know how you top it. I don't know how you top this goal that he scored against Kansas City on Saturday. Was amazing. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you time it. Those bicycle kicks and off a corner like that, and the ball's floating in the air all that time, and you time it perfectly. I don't. Those guys are amazing.
My goodness.
When they say, when I hear people say, yeah, soccer players, they've got good wind and they run a lot and do this, but no, these guys are world-class athletes, even at the MLS level. And that was just an amazing kick. And
my goodness.
Yeah, I know it is. It's oh my goodness. When I that's why you pay money to go see this stuff. It's things like that. That's why there's big contracts in television for live sports. It's things like that. You don't just find any Tom, Dick, or Harry off the street that can do that. These are special athletes who do special things, and that was amazing. So, they go 4-0 in the month of April. They're in first place, looking really, really strong on both sides of the ball, as you said. The keeper's doing great. The defense is doing well. They're really coming together. You just hope it's not like a couple of years ago and you peaked too early. right?
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
Kevin Newton's got to be thinking of that. He's got to be thinking that.
Just wait until there's one of those breaks that we hate and all the momentum falls apart and they're trying to figure out
last year. Didn't it?
Yeah.
It totally seemed like it happened. And I know he's thinking that. He's got to be thinking, oh my God, don't peak too early, but you want your guys playing as well as they can the whole time. And so you're not going to take your foot off the gas, but I think they put together a hell of a team. And you know, you lose a guy like Acosta, and you're like, okay, we'll go get this Evander dude. You know, Denke's back. It's just they've got talent. I was telling people this last night. We were talking about this. It's just like I do admire that organization for, okay, this guy wants to leave. This guy wants to leave. Okay, let's go find somebody better. And they seem to do that.
Well, they play New York City FC on Sunday. New York City is favored in this one, so we'll see. If you're trying to win some money right now, I'm
all over Cincinnati in that one.
All I see right now when I look at the last five is WWWWW. So
New York City's coming off a win. They beat Toronto, and Toronto sucks. So but it is on the road. But I mean, this team's playing really well right now. I'm surprised. You said New York City is favored?
Yep. They're at plus 120. They're at plus 125, and Cincinnati's at plus 205. So you might be able to make some decent cash if Cincinnati wins.
I think I'm going to give that a shot.
We got a little extra time here. A question came up last night that I would like to get your thoughts on. Ryan in our Riffing with Royer segment last night asked if the Reds, Bengals, or Bearcats basketball team won a championship, a national championship. Who do you think would have the bigger effect on the city? You've covered this city for decades, and I would throw in the mix as well the Bearcats football team and FC Cincinnati. So who do you think of the five would have a bigger impact on the city as a whole?
I'll tell you what, I would have to say the Bengals.
We consensus agreed there. Who would your next team be?
Oh, they weren't in the mix? You didn't say Bengals?
The Bengals were number one. We consensus. We all agreed they were number one.
Okay, after the Bengals, then we go Reds. Well, here's
where we were at.
I would say the Reds. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is Xavier fans are Reds fans. Miami fans are Reds fans. Ohio State fans, half of them are Reds fans.
Yeah.
Ohio University fans are Reds fans. Kentucky fans are Reds fans. I mean, it's
West Virginia fans.
Yes. It's such a big body of people. And I'm telling you, if the Reds won it all, the massive crowd for their parade would be incredible. People would come from all over. UC basketball or that would be big. But it would be UC. But Xavier fans ain't coming to that.
Right.
Miami fans aren't coming for that. Kentucky fans aren't coming for that. They're just not. And I get it. So I would say, and then, boy, I'll tell you what, when you boil it down, though, after the Reds and the Bengals, then you say FC Cincinnati or UC I don't know, because I think UC basketball would be a close call, in my opinion. I think UC basketball would be the one right now. I agree. FC Cincinnati is still really new, relatively speaking, from these other, UC basketball fans are starved for success. Starved. It's been how long since the Final Four? 33 years now, thereabouts. So it's just, that would be an explosion. And we saw a little bit of that. And I know it was just, but when UC's football team went to the 14 playoff,
Mhm.
I was stunned. I was stunned at how many people were involved in that and fired up about it. How many people went to Dallas for that game?
Right.
That was crazy. Like if FC Cincinnati played a game somewhere, I don't think that many people would travel that UC had for that game against Alabama in the Cotton Bowl. In
I
that,
agree.
I I'm down there covering it, and I'm like, they'll bring some people, sure. I could not believe it the day before the game how many people from Cincinnati came into that city for that
Well,
game, and
when
that's
you talk
a small expense.
when you
That's
talk about the Bearcats by comparison to pro teams, you're talking about a potential 40,000 plus new fans every single year
right.
that are enrolled in the college.
Right. And when I went to school there, when people graduate, hardly anyone went to the football games. Now
Right.
it's kind of a coveted student ticket. And you get ingrained in that and you want to be a part of it and you see how much fun it is. And it's such a different animal now. So I would think a UC basketball, because we saw it in football, and I think a UC Final Four would be bigger than what people think. You know, the average Joe would probably get caught up in it who's not really hardcore affiliated with Xavier or Kentucky or another program. It sucks them right in because people love winners and it's exciting. And if someone's like, hey, should we go to the final? Hell yeah, we should go to the Final Four. This may not happen again for 30 some years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to say, I was so proud of the Cincinnati people when they made that 14 playoff in football and how many people traveled to Arlington for that game. It was crazy. And you know, the tailgating before and walking through the parking lots and just seeing, you know, here's the mayor, here's this guy, here's that. Everybody wanted to be a part of it. It was fun.
It was a lot of fun down there. I agree.
Yeah, it was so much fun.
And that's not a knock on FC Cincinnati, but
no, not at all. They're
very
good at the game, and
very
soccer
yep.
is not, you know, ingrained in everybody yet. You know, basketball and football kind of are, and that's not to say. Look, I did not think that this FC Cincinnati thing would work as well as it did when they started, and they said they're going to play at Nippert Stadium. It's like, okay, this is the 20th professional soccer team to try to, you know, I remember the Cincinnati Comets from the early to mid 70s when hell, that may have been called MLS or something. And it didn't work. It never worked. There were all these startups. However, they did have great marketing, great people, and something called Lindner dollars behind it that helped make all this happen. And God bless them. They made it work.
Anything going on in high school baseball, George?
Well, it's been an interesting week, actually. Moeller's still number one in the state, despite losing the St. X last Wednesday. And then I think maybe they turned around and beat them. Mason lost at Lakota West. Mason is number 3 in the state. They were number 2, but they lost to Lakota West last Wednesday. Then they turn around on Friday and what? Beat Lakota West. So it's crazy. These teams, you know, Moeller, Mason, those are 2 great teams. And it's my guess is that's what it'll come down to. Lakota West could play spoiler. Oak Hill's up to 14, though. So look out there. And Oak Hills has some really quality wins. In Kentucky, Beechwood did lose in the semifinals of the All-A Classic. Job well done. They lost to Lyon County, who became the eventual All-A Classic winner. And God bless Lyon County. They're down there by Paducah. So they're down there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Although they're probably an hour, a little over an hour from Nashville. So there's that.
All right. I think that's going to wrap up our show this week, though. George, thank you as always. Thank you again to Cincy Light for sponsoring our studios. Thank you to Remington Tavern for sponsoring our show. You can find them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, Bottle Cap Bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. Be sure to grab you an ice cold Cincy Light while you're there. But for George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We're going to be back here on Tuesday night, 9 o'clock next week, doing it all over again to talk all of your Cincinnati sports.
Thank you, Aaron.